All right. So today I'm going to do a demo on a reductive monotype technique, but using multiple colors. And I'm going to use the Speedball gel plate. So you want to take it out of this package. You want to be a little careful with this. This plate's been used a bit, so you can see it's somewhat colored. So a little bit stained, but it has protective coating on both sides. I leave the back one on and just peel off one of them and save that because you'll want to put it back on when you're done. So I'm going to start with my Hansa yellow color. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. And you can roll out a separate palette for your ink, but I'm just going to actually dab it right on the plate and sort of roll this up. A nice clean roller. And I'm going to ink up the entire plate. And so what I'm going to do, just like the black and white reductive monotype, again, you want to take away from your yellow plate where you don't want yellow to print. So I'm just going to make something up kind of simple, but you can go by a drawing. So you have to think here, where do I want yellow to print? But also if I want it to mix with the red to make an orange, I need to leave the yellow there too. And if I want it to mix with the blue to make a green, I need to leave it there as well. So I'm actually just going to do kind of a simple, fun, abstract image, but you can do this with very figurative imagery, non-representational as well. I'm going to show you some prints where folks have done both. So wherever I'm taking this away, and I can kind of leave it a little more brushy, right? So a little bit of yellow. All right, so just removing where I don't want it to print yellow. You can take paper towel or a rag as well. Here's some ink. You don't want to use any solvents on these gel plates because that will dissolve them. So you really just want to use rags, Q-tips, your fingers to take the ink off. Again, if you don't like something that you've done, you can just kind of like roll it back on and adjust as you're going. Very forgiving. I'm going to take a little bit off down here by dabbing this. Now, the one thing you're going to find about the jelly plate that was a little different than the plexi that I was using in the black and white monotype demo that I've done is I'm going to use my baren again because we're not using a press with these. And this responds really well to hand printing. You'll get a lot of the ink off the block. So I'm going to take the paper that I've torn down to a smaller size. And again, I'm just going to, for ease sake, I'm just going to use the edges of the block right now as my registration guide. And then I'll just cut off, well, actually tear off the extra paper here when I'm done. So again, just adhering the paper down, using my baren. All right, so you can kind of pull it back and see what you've got. If there is an area that you want to emphasize a little bit more. You can use the burnisher on here, but you really don't have to push very hard. All right, so you can kind of see the yellow that we're getting. All right, so there's yellow. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take another piece of paper and a little bit of the Akua releasing agent. And again, this is where it's nice if you have, oops, I have one that's already open. Let's use that one. Here it is. This is where it's nice if you have more than one roller. So if you only have one roller right now, and I'll show you that, you just have to clean it off in between each color. So I would take, this is where the baby wipes come in handy. Right. Sticky to get out. All right. So baby wipes are really good for cleaning off the ink on your roller, as well as cleaning the block, the gel block. All right, so these are a little bit wet. So oftentimes I'll take a piece of paper towel. Afterwards, just go over that so it's dry. Right. And I'm going to roll out releasing agent thin. Right, and I'm going to roll this over the block. And again, what this does, it kind of helps release a little bit more of that ink. Again, roller goes face up when you put it down. If you leave your rollers like this, sitting like that, eventually that flattens out the bottom part of the roller, and then it's not round anymore. So although the temptation is to put it down like that, you always want to just flip it over. All right, so I'm going to take another piece of paper. Lay it down again using my block to register. And use the baren to print. Once you put your paper down, you really, it wants to stick down pretty quickly. So you've got to be decisive and not move it around. Otherwise your image will shift. So let's see what this one looks like. So it's going to be lighter because it's a ghost print. A little bit more. But sometimes the ghost prints are really lovely and maybe even nicer than the original, but you have to do the first pull to get to the ghost. So there's a ghost of my first yellow, and you can see here the difference. This is the first one, this is the second one. All right, so now I'm going to take that baby wipe and wipe the rest of the ink off of this block. I clean all the yellow off. And it will depend the printing order that you do. I'm just doing my cyan first, my red next, and then the blue. And then you can also do black to do a 4-color. But it will make a difference which printing order you do them in. If I do the yellow last and the yellow sitting more on top of the red or the blue, you'll get lighter mixtures because yellow's on top. I'm doing it first in this particular one. So you'll have to try doing your prints and switching the order up of which one you print first and which one you print second and third, because it will make a difference of what they look like. So again, mix your ink up really well. Put some out. All right, and instead of cleaning that roller up, since I have another roller, I'm going to use clean roller to ink up the block again. This time, oops, I'm using a little bit of the crimson red. Which is more like the magenta in a CMYK mixture. It's a little more pink than the scarlet red. So with this inking and with wiping of the magenta, I want it on there nice and smooth. I have to think that I'm going to wipe away. I'm going to put just a little bit more ink on there. I'm going to wipe away on this block where I don't want the red to print, but if I want any of the red to mix with the yellow, I need to leave it on the block. So sometimes if people have a drawing that they're doing from, they'll put it underneath the block and you can see through it. Or if you have a small light table, that works really well to put the block on the light table with your drawing underneath it. For this demo, I'm just sort of winging it, and we're going to see what happens. So do a dot there. So I'm removing the red. So wherever, obviously, I remove the red, it won't print. So you want to leave the red where you want the red to print, as well as where you want the red to mix with the yellow and to mix with your blue. So it takes a little bit of thinking if you have a really specific image and you know where you want your specific colors. For this one, I'm just playing and we'll see what happens. All right. Use some paper towel again. So you can see that just by the way you wipe this away, you can get some really sort of loose, painterly looking marks with Monotype. You can also be very exacting. You know, you can use Q-tips and paper towels and get very sharp edges. So it really depends on what you want your image to look like. All right, so now I'm going to take the first print I did. This was the first pull. Again, I'm going to use the block as a guide for the paper. And in the end, I will tear off these extra border sides and I'll be making what's called a bleed print. A bleed print is a print with an image that has no paper, no extra borders on it. The image goes right to the edge of the paper. All right. So again, you may want to use a piece of newsprint. I have a paper towel right here, so I'm going to use that over the image, just so if there's a little bit on the edges, you don't get your baren dirty. So I can then pull this up and see what we've got. All right. So you can see where the magenta printed on its own, where it's mixed down here to make this more orangey color, and where the yellow's showing through. So now, since I still have some ink left on this block, I'm going to take the releasing agents again, roll a little bit over this, really gently. And for this demo, I'm just printing it right away, but you may want to let it set just for a minute to kind of let that soak into the ink. And a little bit may offset onto your roller, but that's fine. So I'm going to take the ghost print that I did on the yellow, and I'm going to print the ghost of the crimson red. Same technique, and you can see it really sticks to it right as you put it down. Put this on top. And for hand printing, I have to say the gel plates using the baren are much more sensitive to the ink than the plexi plates are. I find when I'm printing the plexi plates, I have to push a little harder with the baren, and I really do need the etching burnisher to get a solid black. The gel plates just really sort of pick up the ink really well onto the paper. So this is the ghost of my two printed together. So you can see this is a lot lighter than the original, or the first pull. So this is the first pull from the block. This is the ghost. It's called a ghost print, but it's a lot lighter and you get sort of different mixtures. So now I think I'm going to put on my gloves, which you can use the whole time you're working if you want. And I'm going to clean off the red block, and I'm going to clean off the red roller. So still got a little bit left on this baby white. Clean off the block really well. And eventually, every use, the pigments in the ink will stain your gel blocks a little bit, which is why mine looks a little bit more yellow than if you're starting off with a new block. But they'll still print fine. As long as you're gentle with the blocks, they'll last for a long time. All right, so I'm cleaning off my block, and I'm going to clean off the roller. One thing I notice is people oftentimes don't clean off rollers very well. They'll leave a lot of the residue of the ink on there. It just takes going over it a couple times so you can get it back nice and clean. Now, when you start off with the Speedball soft rubber brayers, eventually they also stain. The pigments in the ink might stain them a little bit, which is not a big deal as long as you're just getting all of the residual ink off, especially when you work with the blues, the darker colors, blues and blacks, and you're rolling your roller up with black ink. It may stain a bit, so it might not look like it did when you first got it. The color might change just a little bit, but as long as you're getting all of the ink off, and also make sure you check the sides. Ink can build up there sometimes, and you'll be printing and you'll have that other color sort of pollute the color you're using. So make sure you also are diligent and get the sides of the roller right there. So got that. And I'm going to take one more baby wipe out just to make sure, oops, got a little bit of blue on there, just to make sure I've got all the ink off. So you can see, still some ink on there. All right. One more time. And then you may want to take a paper towel, just go over that. Again, the baby wipes. Leave a little bit of dampness on the roller. So you can see, it's not totally perfect as it was as a brand new roller, but that looks pretty good. All right, so now I'm going to take the phthalo blue, And I'm just using little kind of popsicle sticks, like to mix my inks up, and just labeled them so I don't mix them up and don't have to keep reusing new ones. But if you've got a little palette knife, plastic spoon, you can use those as well. So again, same thing, just gonna put a little ink out. Roll it up. And there's different effects. I'm rolling my blocks to solid blue, but you can see even right here, it's lighter and darker. So you could, just the way you apply the ink to the block, you can create a different image with more ink on one side or selective rolling. I'm trying to get my block nice and even all the way around with the ink for this demo. But there's a lot of ways you can manipulate your print just by the way you roll the ink onto the block. So now I find it easier to take these off when I'm printing. I'm going to take the print that I've done the yellow and the magenta on. I'm going to print that one first after I take some blue off. So I'm looking at that just to give me an idea of maybe where I want to keep some of the yellow and the magenta I've already printed. So where I remove the blue, the yellow and the magenta will show up. So if you're doing, let's say, a figurative image, you just have to plan out where you want this blue to mix, let's say, with your red to get your purples, and where you want it to mix with the yellows to get some greens. If you're going to do a strict sort of 4K, a 4-color, which would be CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If you want to have more of a key in there, or really dark images. I'm just going to do 3 colors for these. All right. So you can see how if you're using Q-tips, you can go through quite a few, but they really give you a nice sense of control in these. All right. So now I've got my blue block. I'm going to take the print again with the yellow and the magenta, the first one that I did. I'm going to line this up. Right. This one. So you can see my paper was over just a little bit, so it's good to put a piece of newsprint or a paper towel down so you don't get that ink onto your baren, on the back of your baren. So let's see what this looks like. This is the fun part. This is the big reveal. This is where all of you are going, ooh, ah, right? So you can get a lot of colors, right, out of just doing 3-color reductive monotype. Now, if I wanted to, I could also roll in a black one and kind of have a key block over this if I want to. So there's sort of our first print. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to roll the releasing agent over the blue. I could print it right now and the ink would still come off if I did it, but using the releasing agent, it just prints a little better. If you don't have it, it's fine. You can still pull a ghost print and you'll still get some ink coming off this block because there's still ink left on it. All right, so a little bit more comes off with the blue, but it cleans right off. So I'm going to take the one where I've been doing the ghost images of the yellow and the red. Down. Over it. Again, for the sake of this demo, I'm just doing it right away, but you may want to wait just a minute or two after you put the release agent down, kind of let it soak into that ink a little bit. All right, you can already see the ink coming through on the back. And you can see that we've got another print with some beautiful colors on it. It's just a little lighter, a little more subtle in a different way than the first one was. So you can get two prints from sort of one, the singular inkings that you're doing. And then there's nothing that says you couldn't ink up another block and print something else on top of this. You can keep going with them and print as many layers as you want. I just wanted to show you, I guess, the CMY. We're not printing the black on here today, but I could very easily ink this up, clean off the roller, clean off the block, ink it up in black like we did for the black and white monotype, and have another layer if you want it a little more richer in some areas and some really dark areas. So that's it for doing a reductive color monotype. This one I did pretty quickly and sort of impulsively. You can go that way, or you can have an image where you have everything planned out. Like I said, you can have the image in front of you. When you put the blue on, sometimes it's a little harder to see through the block because the blue is dark. So if you have a light table with you, that's where that works really well. Or just go for it and see what happens. It's a very loose, sort of intuitive way of working anyway. So at this point, what I'm going to do is clean off both of my rollers with the baby wipes, clean off the sticks so I can have them, put everything away, and wipe my plate down with the baby wipes. Sometimes using Akua inks, I find if things really start to get stained and the baby wipes aren't taking them off, I use a little bit of, this is vegetable oil, just plain old vegetable oil that you'd use cooking, and I use this to clean up the inks and the rollers if the staining isn't coming off. And that's really with the gel block after I've used it for a long time. So I might clean it off with a little bit of vegetable oil. But there you go. We're done making a multicolor. And there they are. Reductive 3-color monotype. So one thing I wanted to show you is once I've cleaned off the jelly plate, and I actually used a little bit of the vegetable oil that I have in a little container here, is that clear protective sheet that you took off in the beginning. You just want to line that up, put it back on to protect the plate when you're not using it. So now again, it's sandwiched. You can kind of get some of those air bubbles out. It's sandwiched in between the two pieces of plastic it came with. And then when I'm not using it, I just put it back in the container it came in, just to keep it nice and clean and safe, and so it doesn't get dinged up. All right. And you can see my rollers, nice and clean. After using, I did use a little baby oil, or a little vegetable oil after the blue roll just to get all the color off, but nice and clean. And when you're done with them, make sure that they're on your table face up.